कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ाएंगे, सबको सिखाएंगे. अंडरस्टैंडिंग बैंक्स प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस स्टेटमेंट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट वी आर गोइंग टू कवर टुडे. Hello everyone, welcome to XMD. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. We started this series of concept पढ़ाएंगे and सबको सिखाएंगे to help you understand the most important economic, banking and financial concepts. We have already covered 15 concepts till now. And if you have missed any of these, you can go back and visit our page to watch any of these videos and also take the related quiz. Today's topic, in which I am talking about understanding the bank's balance sheet, is in continuation with this topic that I have covered, in which initially I have covered the assets and liabilities, then the capital, and today we are talking about the profit and loss statement. So when we are talking about the profit and loss statement, we might have heard, हमने कई बार ये सुना भी होगा, न्यूज़पेपर्स में पढ़ा भी होगा कि पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स का प्राइमरी मोटिव जो रहता है, that is financial inclusion. Financial inclusion बहुत important aspect है, बहुत important agenda है और objective है public sector banks का. If I look at certain data, जो ये RBI से आपको मिला है ये data हमें, if you see the geographic distribution of branches, right, of public sector banks and private sector banks, then in the rural areas, the public sector banks has a much more penetration as compared to the private sector banks, right? And we will find private sector banks more in the metropolitan cities. If you look at the lending in the rural areas that is being done, PSBs again has a giant share, more than 70% share has been there by the public sector banks over the years, right? Another data which shows is the distribution of the ATMs, right? So ATMs play a very important role in the cash economy of our country. Again, in the rural areas, PSBs or the public sector banks have a high distribution, high penetration. And the BC model has also been one of the forte for financial inclusion for the public sector banks. If I further look at, we have talked about the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is about reaching the banking account to every household, and 78% of these Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana were actually being opened with public sector banks, and almost 60% of these accounts have been opened by the PSBs in the rural and semi-urban areas. Again, this is data collated by RBI, right? So if this is the primary motive of public sector banks, why are we talking about the profit loss statement? Why are we talking about profit? Do these banks have any kind of motive related to profit? The answer is simply yes. Why? Because yes, financial inclusion is one of the main objectives of public sector banks, but they are ultimately entities who need to sustain themselves, and therefore PSBs also have the same business model like any other bank. So the first video that we had done on understanding the financial statements and the bank's balance sheet, in this I had explained you the business model of the bank, and as per that business model, it holds true even for the public sector banks, which is that the bank accepts deposits from the various savers and public and pays interest to them, while on the other side that money is used to give loans and lend that money to various borrowers, on which the bank earns profit and interest, right? So that is the simple banking model which is also followed by the public sector banks. So let's now understand how the income flows in and out from a bank, right? I have a basic structure of the balance sheet here and your profit and loss account. So the biggest chunk of income or the main source of income for a bank is the interest income, as I said, because that's the business model. We take money from the savers and then lend that money to the borrowers and earn interest on them. So the interest income becomes the biggest chunk, and this is earned on what? The loan book, which is the advances which the banks has given. Okay, it is also known as the advances or the assets, the performing assets of the bank, which lead to interest income. The bank also earns certain other incomes which may come out from the investments they have done, from fixed assets, certain cash and all. And of course, these investments and cash balances can also lead to some kind of income for the bank, right? So like if they keep cash in other bank accounts, they can also earn interest, or if they have invested in the bonds of other companies, they may earn interest. Yes, but that's not the primary source of interest income. The primary source of interest income becomes the advances given by the banks. Now this becomes the revenue or the income for the bank. What about the expenses? If I'm talking about the expenses, again the major chunk of expenses for a bank is again interest. But now this interest is what the bank pays to the depositors and to other lenders, right? So if we remember from the bank's balance sheet, the biggest liability for the banks are the deposit money. This deposit money can be in the form of current deposits, it could be in the form of saving deposits, which we call as the CASA deposits, and these could also be the term deposits, right, which are commonly also known as the FDs, fixed deposits, right? And then there can be other borrowings in the form of issue of bonds, or from other international agencies or government agencies, that the borrowings that the banks are making. So cumulatively on all these, interest is paid by the bank, which becomes the biggest chunk of your expense for the bank. The difference between the interest income and the interest cost is basically the gross profit which the bank is earning, and it is actually referred to as NII, or the net interest income for the bank. The other cost, the other income, of course, becomes the part of the revenue and is transferred to become the other income for the bank. Other major cost which the bank has to undertake is the provisions and write-offs. These provisions and write-offs are actually again associated with the loan book, which is turning bad. In a session day before yesterday by Arunima ma'am, she has explained you the meaning of NPAs, that is non-performing assets, and bad loans. Right? So basically these are reflective of the asset quality. What we mean by the asset quality is how good is your loan book. That means how good is the loans that are performing and they don't end up being non-performing. If they end up being bad or non-performing, the bank has to, as a part of their prudent strategy or being conservatively, they start providing or taking out certain part of your profits and keeping it aside in in future of a calamity where they may not be able to recover that money from the loan that has gone bad. That is what we mean by provisions, and this reflecting the asset quality. So if the asset quality is good and we have all the performing assets, that means my loan book is good, my provisions amount or expense will be small. If my asset quality is going bad, that means my NPAs are increasing. In that case, my provision cost will be high and it will eat into my profitability, right? After that, the bank also, of course, incurs various operating expenses. OPEX is your operating expenses. Now these operating expenses are for the daily running of the bank, right? Like the employee cost, okay, the cost of paying for the power, the rent for the various branches and the outlets which the bank has, and other administrative expenses, any kind of marketing expenses they have to undertake, any kind of depreciation they have to provide for the small amount of fixed assets that they have. So all these become the operating cost, which leads to the profit before taxation. Yes, if you are earning any kind of profit, you are liable to pay tax to the government, and after that what you are left with is your net profit, or the profit after tax, also known as the net profit. So yes, banks do earn profit, and this net profit either gets appropriated into various kind of reserves which the bank may create, and or it can be recouped back and it flows back to become a part of the net worth of the bank, right? So it becomes a part of the reserves, which are a part of the net worth, also known as the shareholders' equity, right? So this goes back and flows back and adds to the net worth or the shareholders' equity or the shareholders' funds of the bank, right? Of course, to balance, we do have some other kind of liabilities, like your current liabilities or provisions which the bank has. So this is how the interlinkage between the balance sheet and the profit and loss happens, and this is how the banks is earning and making profit, even including your public sector banks and the private sector banks. The motive may be different, the amount of profit earned may be different. However, everybody strives to make this balance work. Let's have a look at the profit and loss statement of State Bank of India. As you can see, the income is the interest earned and the other income, and expenditure is the interest expended, operating expenses, and the various provisions for contingencies, which leads to the net profit for the year. And after that, you add appropriations by transferring to the various reserves that the bank may have to create, and the balance can be carried over as the surplus in the profit and loss statement. However, all of this will form the part of your net worth through various reserves accumulation. The profit and loss statement, therefore, is a summary of the financial performance of the bank during a particular year. That's all for today's session. I hope you have been able to understand how the bank is earning and how it is reflecting in the profit and loss statement, and how NPAs have an impact on the balance sheet and also on the profit and loss statement of the bank. Take a short quiz. Don't forget to take this quiz to understand your concepts related to the bank's financial statements. In my next one, you will also be covering the ratios related to the bank. So don't forget to visit this page to keep clearing your doubts. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon, where with iExamB you will be able to prepare 50% faster. Thank you, everyone.